Good morning, everyone. My name is Carlos Fonseca, and today we are going to talk about how we can move from Shopify to Odoo, specifically using an approach of headless e-commerce. I'm the COO in ERP Gap. We have more than a decade of experience. Our main focus, is all things related with Odoo. We are very strong in US and UK as Odoo partners, but we pretty much have projects all across the globe. Now for today we are going to talk about the hidden limits of Shopify when we really start to grow our business. Then we are going to talk about how we can remove those limitations using this powerful combination of Alokai and Odoo. And finally, we are going to talk about the migration strategy and how we can actually do the move from Shopify to Odoo. Now, the first thing I want to say is that Shopify is really a fantastic tool. I think we have to give credit where credit is due. It's very easy to use. Most of the times, the problem is just to start. And with Shopify, you can really start to selling quickly. However, this is not about starting. This is what happens when your business just starts to grow and you're starting to feel some pains related with that. Now, the first thing I want to mention is that, Shopify has user experience patterns very well standardized, which it seems it's an advantage because we know that if we move far away from those standards, we can lose some revenue, we can lose some conversions. However, we end up, all the stores feel a bit similar in a couple of workflows like login, the checkout. Usually it's very similar. Now also we have a heavily rely on apps. So anything you want to do besides native features from Shopify, you will need to end up relying on apps. So it's very easy to just stack in apps at the end of the day. Very simple things like gift cards, loyalty programs. If you need reviews, those are native features that don't exist in Shopify. And also integration roadblocks. So you will end up needing to connect with complex ERPs like Odoo, CRMs, accounting, inventory, all those things you will feel really the necessity to do those integrations. And sometimes those integrations can be very complex and time consuming. For example, we in ERP Gap, we have a module that synchronizes with Shopify, and we build some custom ETL scripts that basically transforms the data that we can extract from Shopify and we insert it in Odoo. But at the end of the day, we have more than one single source of truth, and we can end up with data inconsistencies. So it's not an ideal scenario. Now, one of the biggest problems with Shopify in our experience is the ownership problem. So if you have your store in Shopify, you are basically renting. You are building your business into someone's property. And that's a problem because the data is not in your servers, it's on their servers, which means that if you want to do more complex things, like for example, advanced reporting, it turns out to be more complicated. Now, obviously, you are at their mercy by using Shopify. They can just increase the prices, they can, change the terms of conditions, they can even shut you down if you violate something. And finally, they make it very difficult to migrate because of the Shopify vendor lock-in. You can't take your themes with you. You also can take the apps with you, so sometimes it's just difficult to get things from Shopify. Now, another big problem is costs. You have the monthly costs that Shopify, charge you, and because you need to rely so much on apps, you will end up, paying subscription fees for apps, which most advanced apps will certainly cost you. Now, of course, the budget, it goes to fees, which again, you could use to bring value into your business. And that's where the solution of Alokai and Odoo comes into place. And in this picture, it shows in a nutshell how this works. So we have Odoo. Odoo is the brain of the operation where all the business logic happens, which means that it's where the sale orders are processed, where all the invoices are also processed. So everything happens in Odoo. Then we have Alokai. Alokai is it's the website. It's decoupled from the backend. And the headless part just means that Alokai by itself, it doesn't have any data. So it pulls everything from Alokai, like products, delivery methods, payment methods, etc. We also have Postgres, our database where all the data lives. And finally, we have Redis, which is our caching mechanism. And we essentially use it to reduce the load on the database. Redis stores all the data also in memory RAM, which has faster disk access and also lower latency. Now, before we can actually talk how Odoo and Alokai are going to solve these issues, we need to understand a bit more about Odoo, Alokai, and also the connector that we did for Odoo. And let's start with Odoo. Now, Odoo is the single source of truth. It's where our unified data model lives. It's where we, again, create our customers, our products. We manage all our business in Odoo. And natively, Odoo already supports, pretty much anything that we need. It has, back in stock notification, loyalty programs, gift cards, discounts, delivery methods, anything that you need. Then we have Alokai, and Alokai is the website. It's headless. Again, it's decoupled from the backend, and really the advantage of this is that first you have the creative control of your user experience, your branding, your design, and you can have a dedicated team just for the e-commerce that doesn't need to do anything more besides that. Doesn't need to understand Odoo, doesn't need to understand even the API, just can focus on the design and building the customer journey that you want to build, creating a truly unique brand. Now, the second advantage of Alokai is that it's optimized for fast performance and SEO, which means you can also rank very well in those search engines. And finally, we have our connector. Now, the connector, it's an Odoo module that we did. It's open source. It's freely available in GitHub. And it creates a translation layer that gets the data from Odoo in a clean API and sends that data back to Alokai. So it's like a bridge. And it does that in real time, which means we don't have the problem that we had previously by creating a synchronization process with Shopify. So it also means that all the data that we get from Odoo, again, it's real time. So if we change, for example, the price, it's going to reflect immediately in Alokai. If we change the stock, it's going to reflect also and be visible in Alokai. Now, this means that, again, we have a single source of truth. Everything is in our ERP. Odoo is amazing in doing so many things. And we want to leverage that as much as possible, of course. Now that we have a good understanding, of Odoo and Alokai and the connector, we can start to see some of the advantages and how we are going to fix those limitations. And the first one is that we really don't have the problem about the branding anymore. We can create a very unique experience to our customers. We also don't have the app dependency problem anymore, because we will replace all those apps with native Odoo features. And finally, deeper integrations. Odoo already connects with payment acquirers, with delivery methods, so we can leverage that in our process. Now, another big one is the ownership. We own the code, we own the platform, everything is open source. The data is, with us in our servers. It's not in someone's server. We are in fully control of our business, and I think this one is one of the most important ones. And of course, the nature of open source, the fact that Odoo is open source, Alokai as well, and all the other tools that we mentioned, like Postgres and Redis, the fact that they are open source, it means that we no longer have the vendor lock-in issue. And finally, the costs. Shopify at some point you will probably be forced to update to Shopify Plus, which has a very high monthly cost. And again, this will be some cost that you can cut. Also, you will not have the subscription fees related with apps, because again, you will use the most you can related with Odoo native features. So that said, how can we migrate away from Shopify? And I think the best advice that I can give is that you need to deliver value quickly. I think that's the most important thing. And in terms of the migration, it doesn't need to be a terrifying event that happens in a single event. So you can actually do this in a phased approach. So you can plan several phases into your project and try to go live as soon as possible. Again, to give the value quickly as soon as possible. Of course, this requires some strategy. It also requires to control the risk, which is one of the most important things. Now, you also need to be realistic in terms of what you can move and what you need to rebuild. There are things you can move. For example, you can move the data, you can get products from Shopify, you can get customers, sales history. So those are things that you can export from Shopify and import in Odoo, which it will for sure help in the migration. But there are other things that you will need to rebuild. For example, you can't take your theme with you. Now you can scrape Shopify website and get your own assets, right? And with those assets, you can build a better, faster Alokai website. And you can also, you can't take the apps, which means it's fine in this case because, again, we will replace the apps with Odoo native modules. Now, we usually start by building the foundation. And what this usually means is that you will have 3 different environments: production, the pre-production or staging, and the development instance. You start by installing everything, Odoo, Alokai, the connector, Postgres and Redis. The pre-production staging will be used mostly for testing, which means that you will need to reconfigure all the key integrations, especially in the development and staging instance, so you can have the environments ready for testing. Now, in terms of integrations, it's also important to say that we are not going to migrate integrations. Now, we will most of the times reconfigure those integrations in Odoo, or in some very specific cases, we will need to rebuild them, so build them from scratch. Of course, depending on the integrations. Now, this could be like, email marketing, Klaviyo, MailChimp, could be analytic tools. Most likely, and this is what we usually do, we try to bring the customer to use Odoo fully integrating accounting module. And of course, the inventory. So whatever the inventory schedule system that the user is using in Shopify, we bring that into Odoo. And a very important note as well is that we need to import the stock levels just before we go live, just to keep them very accurate. Now, in terms of the import system, we mainly use two tools. We use very much Odoo built-in import tool, which is great. You have templates out of the box, like importing products, importing customers. You can do that through templates, and Odoo is generally very good in terms of handling large data sets because it processes those records in chunks, usually 2,000 products to avoid the server timeout. And you even have a validation feature, so you make sure your data is, proper imported. Now, for most complex data, we use custom scripts. And a good example of this could be like gift cards, importing gift cards with proper balance, discount codes, or more complex data. We will need to use custom scripts just to transform that data and have the proper, structure, the proper format, just so we can guarantee that the data is going to be imported correctly. Now, also in terms of import, we really need to think this in two steps. The first one is the core data that we can export from Shopify and import into Odoo, and also the data that is related with apps, so app-dependent data. For Shopify native data, we can almost export it through CSVs, things like products, customers, sale history. Sometimes just easier to export in CSV format. For blog content, for the discounts, this needs to be through Shopify API, at least the last time I checked it. Then we have app-dependent data. This can be things like product reviews, depending on the third-party integration that the customer is using. Could be, for example, from Stamp or for other third-party services. Loyalty programs, wish lists, gift cards. So this is usually something that you need to rely on those third-party apps because they are not available natively in Shopify. And finally, one of the most important things is that we basically create a testing blueprint just before the pre-go live. So this blueprint we will make sure that we will follow, especially we use these tests in the pre-production environment where we freeze all the code, and we make sure that we test the full customer journey and that it works perfectly. It could be things like creating an account, making the login, anything related with the checkout, which is crucial. It's one of the most important parts. You want to be able your customers to really be able to pay in the website, right? But we also need to check the content of all pages, links, and making sure you have everything really set up. And that's it. Thanks for watching this presentation, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
All right, so thank you for your talk. So far there are two questions. The first one being, how much time does it take to implement on Alokai frontend?
Well, this usually depends on the project, the complexity of the project. We have some cases that we can do it, for example, in 3 months, but we also have other cases that can be 6 months, can be 1 year. So it really depends on the complexity of the project.
That's true. That's true. Is this just an Odoo module, or are there any other components? It's another question.
So it's the Odoo module. It's the API that exposes all the data, and there is other thing which is Alokai. So Alokai is a project in Nuxt.js that you need to install as well.
Okay. Another person is asking if they can see some integration examples.
Mhm. So we do have integrations working with Alokai. With Shopify specifically, I can't show you anything at the moment because I'm not sure if I have the authorization to do that. But there are other projects that we have on our website. It's our customer use cases that you can visit in this specific URL.
All right. So please use the link here.
Yeah.
And when would you use Alokai over Odoo e-commerce app? In what case?
I think if you really want to scale very high, if you have too many transactions, that's the big advantage, is the performance. But also if you have a specialized team just for the website. So we done templates in Odoo, and we feel the difficulty is that you need to adapt building XML templates in Odoo, and sometimes it's difficult.
Okay.
The modular system of Odoo is really great to build apps, but it's difficult for someone that is very used, for example, to work with in the website to build HTML. It's more difficult for them to adapt. So I think if you have a team that is very dedicated to e-commerce, that makes sense. And also if you really want to scale up, because this is for big website projects.
Okay, thank you so much. One final question. What is the meaning with the product importer? Is it CSV file?
Yeah, the meaning is you need to import data from Shopify, right? So there are things you can move from Shopify, all your data, and we usually do it using these two tools. We have Odoo import, which is great, and we do it. And sometimes we do it through custom scripts, but we need to import data from customers. And actually, that's a very good question, because that's one of the things that sometimes we push to the after the go live. So sometimes it makes sense to break the go live into several phases. And for example, importing historical sale history, it could make sense to do it after the go live. And we import that after the go live. So I'm not sure if I understood the question, but yeah, if it's not clear, maybe the person can ask.
No,
again.
but you answered great. So thank you very much for your talk and for your answers, and hope to see you again soon.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks you. Thank you.